Hello, hello, hello! It's Crafty Chris here with another Thursday night Scrap Your Scraps. Let me just adjust my lighting a bit there. Okay, so today I'm going to play around with some old what do you call these things? Chipboard wings and some Nuvo vintage drops. I think they're matte. Yeah, they're all matte, and some white paint, and I need a paintbrush. Oh, look, there's my paintbrush. It's a bit, needs some work, but it's there. My mat, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to paint my wings and add some make some flowers. I'm going to try this. This is an experiment, so you'll be the first to know if it works, to create some 3D-ish delphiniums, and so that I can add them to the wings, and then create a small 6x6 I'm having a hard time with my words today. A 6x6 canvas board. That's what I'm looking for. So I am going to start first with just preparing these. As you can see, there's a little bit of nastiness on the edges of these. So I get my little teeny tiny scissors and I just carefully snip that back so that, you know what, it's not going to snip. So I'm going to file that. I do have a file somewhere. You have to be careful when you're filing because chipboard doesn't file as nicely as this, like inexpensive lightweight chipboard doesn't file as nicely as some of the heavier weight ones, because this is more papery. Yeah, that's not going to work too well, but that's all I got. So we're going to file that down. See if we can get that off. Try something else. It's a little greenier. Yeah, let's try that one. So you need a little bit of a more aggressive. So this is a fairly fine and this is a fairly aggressive grid on it, so that it files down more chunks than sawdust. Okay, so we're going to do that on all the spots and prep our die cut as best as we can. I'm not worried about the edges being a different color because I am going to be painting it white anyway. There we go. Whoa, that works quite well actually. Just make sure that it's going to look good when it's all white. Being careful to kind of hold it together because these are made out of layers of pressed paper as opposed to a glued hard white or a hard chipboard. So you just want to be careful that you're not separating the papers when you're doing your sanding. And if you have any places that are broken, you want to glue those well in advance, so they're nice and dry and flat. I had some places on this that were broken, so I've glued those. I just want to make sure that they'll stay. That one is a bit of a problem there. So I'm just filing off those little nubby ends and making sure that the top and the bottom are where I'm going to apply the paint, are going to be smooth-sided, because once you get that white paint on there you can really see it. And that's at a seam as well, so I must have had to glue that. So you want to make sure. And that looks pretty good. Maybe a little more up here. Alrighty, I think that's good. Alright, I'm just going to get the dust off my mat there. And I'm going to do the second one, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've finished the second one, but if you'll notice right here, it's starting to fan out, and I need to make sure I've got those layers stuck together. So I am just going to take some clear glue. You want clear because you don't want it to be visible. And wow, really got it jammed up top there. See, this is why you should always clean up your materials. Yes, this is water-based, non-toxic, permanent, dries clear. And I am just going to push in a little bit of glue in between those layers that are separating. Not a lot, just a little bit. Making sure that I get down in there. Okay. And then I am just going to wipe off the edges and push them together. Hold it for a couple of seconds. And just wipe off the excess glue. And then hold it again. And get the excess glue off my fingers, and then it will be able to be painted. Now when you're painting this, you have to remember that it is paper and it will absorb paint, and therefore it will become wet and it can become mushy. So if you're going to do some painting, you're going to do a couple of layers. You're not going to try and paint it all at like completely white all at once. Well, again, clogged. Make sure your white paint is all nicely shaken up. And put your cap back on your glue. There we go. I'm going to roll up my sleeves because there is the possibility of getting white all over me. Alright, so I'm dipping my paintbrush in. And I'm going to start from the tips and just do a base coat to begin with, because once you've sealed it with that base coat, you don't have to worry so much about whether something is going to dry, is going to get all wet and mushy. Just don't work it too much. So a thin base coat. Ooh, my tummy's growling. Alright, just a thin base coat, and we're going to dry that off with our heat gun in just a minute. Alright. And you're going to get paint on your fingers, so just get used to it. And you want to make sure you don't have any excess on the back, because sometimes it goes down and slips underneath. So there we have one that's painted, one that isn't. Just going to bring this one over. It also helps when you're doing a base coat to tell you which side is up, because sometimes these things get ruined and you have a good side and a bad side, so you want to make sure you're using the side that you think is the good side. Okay, so base coating that so that it is a little more protected. Alright, and I'm going to turn it around, base coat the bottom here. And I'm just going to leave that. This is my yucky mat, so I can wash that off later. But the important thing is to dry this coat and get a second coat on there as quickly as possible. And one thing you don't want to have is paint in the
points because I want those points to show as points, not little gullies of paint. Make sure I don't have any paint stuck in any of those pointy parts. That's just not going to work if it does. Okay. This one looks pretty good. Oh, a little bit of paint stuck there, and there, and there. So I'm just getting the paint out of the crevices so it doesn't round it too much. There we go. Okay, back to what I was doing, which is drying. Keep those away, keep that away. And that should be all I need because it was a thin coat. Now I'm going to go along the edges because I do not want to have dark edges. And here again, you're doing this very lightly and quickly because you don't want that to be too overworked or too wet. I'm actually more or less dry brushing it and making sure that I don't clog up the points in the whoop. That one might have to be glued. We'll see how that does when I get the second coat on the top. Okay. Make sure I get all the paint out of those corners. So dry brushing as much as possible. You don't want it really super wet because those layers will separate. But you do not want the black painted sides. You can see the difference between white and the natural, because the lasers actually burn the edges of the paper. And it's okay if you want to do sort of a grungy thing, but I'm not doing grungy on this, so I'm just going to keep painting, making sure I don't leave clumps of paint behind. Got a little bit of fraying happening. Like I said, you want to keep it moving, keep it quick. Try not to separate it. Now, on the inner parts, I'm not going to worry about those because I'm going to have, you know, flowers and stuff on top. But the outer parts are likely to be seen, so I want to make sure that what people are seeing is the white edge of the, whoop, that one. All right. Like I said, just quickly make sure you don't leave any paint behind in any of the little spots. And we've used very little paint so far, so like a nickel's worth size blob. Now this is fraying, but it's fraying on the bottom, so I'm not going to worry about it, because that's going to get stuck down anyway, and I can put some glue on it at the time. Now these are quite absorbent. So I want to get both sides, the top side and the bottom side, if I can. Without fraying the paper too much. Okay. Even more. Another quarter size blob. Almost done one. I just realized I forgot the back sides on the other side. To get the front and the back side. And they will show up as dark. There we go. Alright, so I'm just checking, making sure everything is covered. Now it's soaking up quite a bit in the first round, but that's okay because when we do the last one it'll be fine. Okay, so there's one done, and now I'm going to do the second one. I'll see how that does when I get the second coat on the top. Okay. Make sure I get all the paint out of those corners. So dry brushing as much as possible. You don't want it really super wet because those layers will separate. But you do not want the black painted sides. You can see the difference between white and the natural, because the lasers actually burn the edges of the paper. And it's okay if you want to do sort of a grungy thing, but I'm not doing grungy on this, so I'm just going to keep painting, making sure I don't leave clumps of paint behind. Got a little bit of fraying happening. Like I said, you want to keep it moving, keep it quick. Try not to separate it. Now, on the inner parts, I'm not going to worry about those because I'm going to have, you know, flowers and stuff on top. But the outer parts are likely to be seen, so I want to make sure that what people are seeing is the white edge of the, that one. All right. Like I said, just quickly make sure you don't leave any paint behind in any of the little spots. And we've used very little paint so far, so like a nickel's worth size blob. Now this is fraying, but it's fraying on the bottom, so I'm not going to worry about it, because that's going to get stuck down anyway, and I can put some glue on it at the time. Now these are quite absorbent. So I want to get both sides, the top side and the bottom side, if I can. Without fraying the paper too much. Okay. Even more. Another quarter size blob. There we go. And almost done one. just realized I forgot the back sides on the other side. To get the front and the back side. And they will show up as dark. There we go. Alright, so I'm just checking, making sure everything is covered. Now it's soaking up quite a bit in the first round, but that's okay because when we do the last one it'll be fine. Okay, so there's one done, and now I'm going to do the second one. Alrighty, so we have our first layer on. Now it's just a matter of going over the top again, now that everything is dried up, and making sure you have a nice second layer. You don't want any of that. This paper was on the yellow side, so I'm really trying to get a definite white look here. And in doing that, I've got to make sure I cover all the surfaces with that second coat of white. And once I've done that, I can go in and remove any of the leftover bits that are clogging the corners. There we go. And it's very easy to get that off because it just kind of comes out when you push your brush up there. You get a little bubble of paint and then you just flick, 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 flick. There we go. And just double checking to make sure I've got the white side surface all nicely covered. And again, it is important that you don't overwork it. So you can see when I hold these two things up, one is still creamier. Well, maybe you can't see. But one is whiter, this one, and this one is creamier still. So I need to still have that second coat. And then we will figure out if we need a third coat when we're done. Just noticing that I have some blobs still left. And just as an FYI, this is not my best paintbrush for this kind of stuff because I'm jamming it into crevices and things. I use what I would call my scruff brush. So it's a soft brush. It's not scrubby, it's scruffy. And it allows me to apply the paint and I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm wrecking my brush when I'm running it up against the insides of the cutouts. So having lots of brushes for different reasons is super important. Okay. Now, I'm going to hold this on the sides. Make sure I get this thing nicely coated. And take a look and see if I'm light anywhere. And get the paint out of those little bitty corners. Not corners really, they're more points. Making sure that the points are cleared. There we go. So you have a nice clean finish. A little thick in there. Okay, so now I'm just going to flatten that out a bit. Put these two together. Ooh, look at that goopiness. get rid of that. There we go. There we go. Alrighty. Now we're going to dry that out a little. And we're going to do one final coat. And then the outsides again. If it's tacky or sticky, you know, you still have a ways to go. But these are fine. So I'm going to do one more layer. So that's 3 coats of paint, and I'm happy with that. I do have to do the sides, so I'm going to dry this up a little bit and finish the sides with one more coat. So 2 coats on the side is all you really need. 3 coats on the front. Good, not tacky. So let's start with this guy. And we're just going to go back along those edges. Sorry, I'm out of the camera there. Back along those edges, making sure that we finish them off. And that one's just a shadow. Now we're up to here, just working down the top again, poking in those, oops, don't want to lose. So how do you know when your paintbrush should be tossed is when you start to lose your bristles. So this one is quite old. I've had this one for years. And I just saw a bristle on my work. So that's telling me that probably this paintbrush is on its last legs. Otherwise, I'm going to be picking up bristles. And you know, that's the other reason why that we use the cheap brushes on this kind of thing, because the scruffing is really hard on really good brushes. You don't want to scruff if you don't have to. Okay, so we're done with that. Right, now it is time to clean up, and I'm going to use one of my gross, reusable, messy towels to get as much off the white as I can. And I'm going to throw a little bit of water on there so that, oops, I'm going to remember to unlock it. There we go. It's a minute to get out. And the thing about acrylic paint is that once it dries, it becomes a solid sort of thing, and it comes off like this. And some of the ink from my paper towel is coming off, but that's okay, because I want to have some of that white mixed into my paper towel, so it looks really grungy. So I'm all happy with that. And now for the final clean, I am going to get another paper towel and actually spray it down properly with water. And get my brush a little cleaned up too. And now this is where all the ink gets picked up. And you can squish off some of these yucky spots. And we just want to have a clean enough surface that we can do some of our flowers with the, I don't need any more more white. And I'm going to shake some of that off. I'm going to put this aside to dry because it's the beginning of another piece of paper. And one more little swoosh down. One more little paper. There we go. Now I have a flaw, not a flaw, but I've wrecked my mat here, and that's why the color is going through and it remains, because I need a new mat. It's been overly worked. Again, it's about as old as my paintbrush here, so the two of them are about ready to go. And, you know, having good stuff that works is super important. And we're just going to spray some water there. There we go. All right. Now, my fingers are white, and I can take the time now to scrub them off, or I can just keep working, which I think I'll do because I have you here. All right, so a basic, I'm doing delphiniums, and a basic delphinium has sort of 1, 2, 3, it looks like there's sets of 3. So I'm just going to start, and I'm going to put 3 blobs. Let me move in just a little bit closer. There we go. Whoops. Turned around a bit. And I'm going to take that light off. All right. So you should be able to see my 3 dots. And I'm going to use, I am going to use one of these flower molding tools or dot tools. There's a lot of ways you can use these tools. And I'm just going for the bigger of the 2 that I have handy. And I am going to pull those into the center. And pull into the center and pull into the center. And then I'm going to pull out again. And the thing to note about this 3-dimensional stuff is that it is 3-dimensional, and you can move it around a little bit. So I'm going to give some sort of like a 3-prong effect. So you can see where I've moved it out to the top, out to the left side, out to the right side, and then back up to the top again. And then I want to flatten it out as much as I can. So there's sort of the beginnings of a set. So now I'm going to make another one. This time I'm going to make it, I think, a little bit bigger. So 3 blobs. And I'm going to pull this into the center. So I have a center point. And then I'm going to pull it out a little bit further, make it bigger than the original one that I started. And I'm going to pull that out and make it a little bigger than the original one I started. Put that out and do the same thing so that one can go on top of the other, perhaps. Like I said, you're the first ones to see this, so I don't know whether this is going to really work, but it's a great thing to try. Alrighty, and I think I need more light. There we go. So, I kind of have 2 different sizes, and now I'm going to make a 3rd one with even more. And it's going to be pulled in, pulled in, pulled in, and then I'm going to pull it way out and make it much wider. There we go. I'm going to pull this guy way out. And again, make it much wider. Pull this guy out, way out. And make it much wider. There we go. And we're going to see, first of all, if we can peel it off our mat. And second of all, if it creates that three-dimensional look, because it'll be all on its own again when it's off the mat, right? So it's just how the plasticky surface dries. And then I'm just going to make a bunch more. So I'm going to try for 5. I like stuff to be in odd numbers, so I'm going to make 5 total of these and just leave them on my mat to dry. Okay, so I have my basic things happening here, and I've got 3 sets, and I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of yellow to the smaller ones. Not super detailed, I'm sure there's a particular way they should look, and I'm just going to kind of give that a little swirl. So it looks like it's a little flatter. I don't want it to be too 3D. And then I'm going to add to the bigger ones, I'm going to add a little bit of leaf-like stuff. So I'm going to actually create a leaf. And I might take some of that actually and create another leaf over here, because I think I have a little too much there. And I'm going to try to get some of that one off, because I think it might be too much. And get a little bit of a line happening. And I think I need to do it not with this. So let's just put a daub of green in each section where I think it needs to go. There we go. Go back to my pin, my little rounded pointed tool. Oh look, I added an extra leaf to this one, which is fine, but not really necessary. And we're going to pull out that little and just kind of creating that leaf, trying to leave a center draw point in there so that it looks like a real leaf and has some dimension, because these are dimensional. And I'm just kind of moving it so that it's pushing out to the side, so there can be a little bit, I don't want it to be too see-through, but I want to really indicate that there's something going on there. This one might be a little too see-through. There we go, that's a little better. kind of pushing the stuff from left to right and then drawing a line. There we go. That doesn't look too bad. This one needs to be just modified slightly. There we go. All right, now I'm going to get you closer to it so you can see what I've done. Bringing you down so you can see how there is a mottled little center point through the leaves. This one is kind of funny, so that they do kind of look like leaves. And the telltale sign, oops, just realized I didn't do this one. The telltale sign will be when they're dry. We can see whether or not there we go. A little pushing of that, making a leaf, and then I'm pushing the gel out from the center and then drawing a bit down. That's a little too much there. And you have some lead time with this. There we go. Because it doesn't dry right away, you can play around with it a little bit until you get it kind of going the way you want it to go. That one I think I'll leave. Yeah, there we go. And now, I'll leave that probably for 24 hours to dry. And make sure that, you open up your towels so it doesn't stick together. Clean off your utensil because it will dry on there like a rock. Okay, now, I think I'm going to take the little tip, not the bigger tip, but the small tip, and I'm just going to punch in to the yellow. And see if I can't lift up some spikiness to it. Ooh, that's seriously spiky. But it's unfortunately not spiking the way I want it. Okay, we're going to leave it just flat for now. I have a little bit of black that I can add to it after it's dried out a little. And I think I'm overworking it, so it's going to make it not work out too well. Just give this a little bit more here because we've lost the yellow. It's turning green. Alrighty. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that. Let these dry. Okay, I'm testing things here and everything looks like it's okay. So now we're going to see if these, oh, look at that. They do come off the mat. Perfect. I hope they're dry underneath. They might be a little sticky underneath. So, oh, that one broke a little bit. Got to be careful. They may not be ready quite yet, but I'm going to try it anyway. Okay, so the center came out of this one. Let's see what happened. When I pulled this one, there we go. All right, so I am just putting a tiny bit of glue in between each layer. Super tiny bit because they're kind of sticky and they will glue to each other anyway. There we go. Oops. And let's get this little one. Oh.
that wasn't quite dry. So needs a little more time. I did rush it, so I should know that you can't really do that. So anyway, there's one of my flowers. It's a little wonky. Let's see if I can kind of, no. So they do stick quite nicely together. I'm trying to figure out what I think I might do. I don't really like the definition because you can't really see it. Anyway, so there is sort of the direction I'm heading. Let me just turn the light down here a bit. There we go. So I'm going to put some of these on my, what am I trying to say? On my wings. However, I don't think this is ready yet. So I have to do a little bit more. Okay, so I did a little something with that last piece. I added some white in there to give it some definition, but I'm still not absolutely happy with it. I like it better, and it shows up nicer when I put it on the wing, but I think what I'm missing is this bit of white that is supposed to go around the center section of the flower. So I'm just wondering, I actually think, oops, you should be dry by now, but I'm going to take that off of here, and I'm going to put it on the bigger one here. Okay, so I'm going to add this, just a couple of dots here, here, and here, and I put some black dots in the center of the flower, and I'm going to add that white part of it to it because it has the delphinium has a big white section on the inside. And we're going to take these guys off, and I'm going to add some white, a little bit of white to them, but not as much as what I have here. But we'll figure it out. This has an extra flower bit, which is interesting. So I'm just going to put a dab of stuff there. And let's see. I want it to kind of this is the tricky part. Getting it to separate enough to see everything. There we go. We'll try that. It's not right in the center though. Okay. And then we'll put a small dab on there. Just a little bit of glue. Sorry, let me move it more into the screen so you can maybe see what I'm doing. And I'm putting this piece with the white in it in the center. There we go. And then I'm just basically going to go along the upper edge and put a little bit of white on my mat. Get my super fine little pointy bit, not the thicker one, but the thinner one. And I'm just going to take this, and I am going to just kind of go dotty along the edge. A little bit of definition. Not making it too white. This one I make quite white. I just want to show a little bit of definition. Not too much. Going along the edges there. Spreading it out. Add a little bit more along here.
go. And a little more here. So I've made these 3 layers considerably bigger than they really should be, or longer, not bigger. Should be more fat than long, but that's okay. This is an experiment that I'm sharing, and of course everybody's going to do their flowers slightly differently. I haven't seen this done before, so I don't know that there's a right way and a wrong way, other than what I like and I don't like. There we go. And then just pull a little bit up. Oh, there's that one right there. Try and get some of the leftover stuff that's on my mat. So just kind of putting a little bit of white in there so that it has a bit more texture happening. A little more detail. So if I pull this down, you can see how much more detail there is on that than the other ones around it. Okay. And you get to go for a ride. There we go. Just maybe have it a bit lower. This is sort of a close thing to have to watch. All right. So I'm going to take my paper towel, wipe off my end, and I'm going to play with this idea by gluing them all together now. And then there's one here as well. And get that off the end. There we go. That to me feels a little bit more natural. And we'll let that one dry, we'll let this one dry. I'm going to finish these two off and be back shortly. So here they are, the ones that I had done before, these guys here. So I'm just letting them, they have to set. This one I'm trying a little different. So I made the same sort of treatment but less pointy on, and I added 4 panels of petals. So I'm liking already the look of this much better. So this may be the direction that I go for this particular flower. Now, ultimately, it doesn't really matter. A flower is a flower. And these guys, once they're dry, are all going to be clustered. So it should work out fairly nicely on the actual base.
And then I can just pop dot those or do whatever I want to mix and match them. And we'll be back when these guys are dry. All right, so here we are. I'm still letting these sit aside. I want to do some white on them before I stack them. This I have to put a little white on around to match the other delphiniums. I have photos of of the person that I want to remember, and that's going to go in there. So that's sort of the ultimate look, the end look. In the background, her favorite color was purple, so I'm going to get a bluey purple, and I'm going to color in and do some ink work in the background in purples. But basically, that is what the finished product will look like. And of course, I'm going to punch 2 holes and have a ribbon on top. So, lots of things I learned in doing this. I'm more liking what's going on down here. And I think these guys over here, by putting the white on in advance, it's going to make me feel feel a little bit better about those too. But you know, for the most part, this is exactly how I want it to end up. And so I hope that you're going to try using all your gluey things, you know, whatever company and brand you use. These ones happen to be matte, and you can tell that they don't really have much of a shine. A little bit of a sheen, but the white is much shinier than the matte background of these. But you can certainly use any kind of I don't know what you call them, enamel color to create flowers for your work, instead of using the cloth ones and the pre-made cardstock ones. And they're just a little different. They look just a little bit different. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for joining in. I hope I was able to inspire you a little bit, and I will see you next Thursday. Okay, so just an add-in to the end of the video here. I did do those 2 4-petal flowers in purple and blue, and you know what, this is definitely a practice makes perfect situation, because I really like these ones. Just to share,